This guy is the OG, or one of them, of the National Enquirer. Yeah, the National Enquirer covering the world when Tony Brenna was there. He interviewed world leaders at the United Nations. He covered Hollywood. He's been all over the world, from Buenos Aires to Dubai, on stories for the National Enquirer. And now the National Enquirer is front and center. I'd suggest the culture of the National Enquirer, I think he might agree, is different than when he was there. But how about it for the great Tony Brenna, everybody? Hello, sir.
Hello there. Well, it's
Tony,
a very different National Enquirer.
It's a very different National Enquirer, indeed. When did it change, Tony? Well, give us first the National Enquirer to which you were pledged to do your best journalistic work, and you did it for decades. That was what was your North Star then? I mean, it was still a tabloid publication, wasn't it?
It was a tabloid then. I left the United Nations, where I worked for the London Daily Telegraph and the BBC. And the Enquirer was offering four times the salary that any other newspaper or magazine had offered. And it also was a global assignment. I was a roving editor and went around the world for them. It was a very, very exciting publication at that time. The circulation was beginning to soar. It was approaching 5 million. You never knew from day to day what sort of assignment they would throw at you. They could send you to an earthquake. They could send you to a tsunami. They could send you to a forest fire. Anything could come up, and they covered it all. Alternatively, they could send you to LA, and you would be plunged right into the heart of a Hollywood murder story or something like that. It was always different every day. And best of all, there was never any shortage of cash or money. It was a publication that was making a great deal of money, and it spared no expense to get the story, all of which is in marked contrast. This was back in 1972. The change came probably about 10 years ago when David Pecker took over. And sorry, Mark, maybe you want to ask some questions about
No,
this.
I want to follow up. I mean, so what happened when Pecker moved in?
What happened when Pecker moved in? Pecker had delusions of grandeur. He had come from George magazine, where he had worked with one of the Kennedys, and George magazine had gone under his tutelage or management. No, he wasn't doing very well. He came into the Enquirer, and he wanted to make the Enquirer utterly respectable, non-scandalous, non-tabloidy publication, and get the highfalutin advertising. Well, that didn't work. The Enquirer started to lose revenue. The grandiose salaries were cut. The assignments were chinched on. And I mean, I would think nothing, if the story was good enough, I would spend $50,000 to $60,000 on a buy-up story. All of that was cut and limited to $10,000, which was still quite a lot of money, but it was not like Generoso Pope. I mean, Generoso Pope was a tabloid genius. I mean, this man was quite phenomenal.
And just to remind everybody, Generoso Pope was the owner of the publication before. And I think he started the publication, didn't he?
He started
the old man did, yeah.
Yes,
right.
He came from an Italian-American family with links to organized crime. He had also worked for the CIA. He had an amazing background and an amazing flair for what Mr. and Mrs. Lunchbucket wants to read. And the Enquirer absolutely soared under him. There was celebrity journalism, everything about pets, everything about medicine, all breakthrough stories about arthritis, heart disease. All of this stuff was in the pot for publication.
And you know, it's funny, Tony Brenna. I think there's this general view like, oh, it's always been a rag. National Enquirer's a rag. There was a quality. It was a tabloid, but as you said, the issues and things they were covering were of interest to everyone. No one. I mean, you know, when I wasn't picking up the Enquirer in the '70s, maybe, but I just remember, you know, everybody wanted to take a peek at it and wanted to have it and read it. Nobody really would peacock about having like they would peacock about reading the New York Times. They wouldn't peacock about reading the National Enquirer,
Right.
but everybody wanted one and bought one.
Yes, it had that sort of cachet, and of course, it was on every newsstand in the country, and the headlines were so enticing that people just they would read it at the checkout stands and then reluctantly buy it. But I mean, for example, when they covered the death of Elvis Presley, which I was very much involved in, and they had a whole team of people in Memphis. We took over a whole hotel floor. We bought up every girlfriend that Elvis had ever had. And the circulation soared then, I think, on that issue to about 6 or 7 million, which was the highest it ever reached. And people were kicking over newsstands to get copies of it because they had the last picture of Elvis, which was in his coffin, on the front cover. And that had been a whole rigmarole. We had infiltrated the Presley family and lined up one of the cousins with a miniature camera to lean over Elvis in his coffin and press the button.
That's unbelievable. That's
Yes.
extraordinary. And it's the idea somehow that you would pay, or the Enquirer would pay for stories and pay for interviews and pay for assistance and pay for access. That's not a new one. That was part of the culture of the Enquirer.
It was very much a part of the culture of the Enquirer. It also had most of the journalists who worked for the Enquirer were British. They'd come from Fleet Street in England, where tabloid journalism is a lot more scurrilous and a lot more scandalous than American tabloid journalism. And that particular form of journalism is everyday occurrence in Britain at that time. No longer so, I might add, because the whole tabloid field has more or less shrunk, and the mass-selling papers in England, like the News of the World, which was selling like 10, 15 million copies every Sunday, all of that has gone because of the internet and because the advertising has gone elsewhere.
Well, that's the problem that all papers have faced, and that all ad-supported media is facing. I want to ask you, Tony, about this idea somehow that you could, well, you'd pay for a story, but I guess I want to draw the distinction between paying for a story and getting information and making up a story. In other words, I don't think your work in any way reflects invented fictions in any way. You sourced everything that you wrote, didn't you, Tony Brown?
We had an enormous research department, run by a former lady from Time magazine. Everything had to be on tape. Everything had to go through lawyers. We used the same lawyers as Bill Clinton, Williams and Connolly in Washington. The lawyers would come down every week from Washington and sit in on the office and go through the copy, and reporters would be called up to justify what they'd written and to see it was on tape. Now, we had our own language. I mean, we would call it Enquirer speak. You know, we would, if a ship was sinking and the captain told you, "Oh, it was horrible. I had a terrible time. I nearly drowned." We would change it into my life my life was before me. The icy water closed over my head. I thought this is the end. We would jazz it up
Sure,
but
of
it
course.
was
Yeah.
all factually true. Uh,
Then that changed. It seems to me that under Pecker's tutelage, and I know he's got that word, he's got his name Pecker, which everybody kind of goes,
so
but
appropriate.
under his uh, tutelage, under his leadership, he's the guy on the stand in the Trump trial now, and they're talking about this, the catch and kill schemes that the Enquirer ran. But I was talking to the audience to start the show about the fact that they also have introduced into evidence these other kinds of stories he would do about, the strength of Donald Trump, the physical prowess of Donald Trump, the wealth of Donald Trump. And he would also concoct, I'm talking about David Pecker and his staff, they would concoct stories about Hillary Clinton, stories about Ted Cruz, stories that had absolutely no factual foundation. I mean, that Cruz's dad was in on the JFK assassination, that kind of thing. That stuff, that is more representative and reflective of the David Pecker regime. It was nothing like that when you were there.
No, it was nothing like that at all. In fact, it would have been instant dismissal of anybody doing that. No, sensationalized, yes, but Pecker had this long-lasting relationship with Trump, and this was something that he did because he wanted favors from Trump if Trump should become elected president. I'll give you one example of that, which has not come out anywhere else, and that is that one of the things that when the Enquirer was slipping and failing and be getting into financial problems, Pecker wanted money from the Saudis, and he was trying to get Trump, who was and the Trump family, and through his son-in-law, who were knee deep in connections to the Saudi princes, he was trying to get them to invest in the Enquirer. So that was one of Pecker's motivations. Actually, Pecker did produce a special one-off edition magazine for the Saudis, which was to popularize the Saudi regime.
Wow, that's extraordinary. I wasn't aware of that.
Pretty
Yeah.
extraordinary. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not many people are aware of it. I don't think it's been referenced anywhere, but it's a fact. And of course, the other thing is that Trump may have been friends with David Pecker, but David Pecker, I say this advisedly, but he was not a man of much real honesty at all. He totally out for himself, totally out to. He'd come from a Brooklyn background. He wanted to be a publishing gentleman. He wanted to be up there with the glossy magazines, and he would do anything to further his own cause. Now, having the president of the United States in your pocket, because you already knew a lot about him and you'd helped getting him elected, would have put Pecker in a very powerful position. He would have been able to do to Trump what Trump was doing to other people, using them and putting pressure on them, catch and kill sort of thing.
It's funny. There's no honor among thieves, But so in this case, you have two guys who sound like they're exactly the same kind of guy, out for themselves.
They are the same kind of guys, and they're shark. It's a question of which shark would have ate the other one first.
Yeah. Wow, that's just wild. All right, in my last minute, I want you to tell me an OG story from your world at the Enquirer. I heard that the magazine or the newspaper, I'm sorry, the Enquirer, was anxious to get some information on, was it Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and they were in first class. You know the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, I found out that they were going to get married again. I found the plane they were flying from Geneva to Tel Aviv on. I bought up 8 first-class tickets on that plane at enormous expense. Even I was in trouble for that, because they said, "My God, 8 first-class tickets from Geneva to Tel Aviv." So I then sat on the plane opposite them, and Liz was totally pissed off the fact that I attempted to interview them and called for the captain and what have you. And the captain came back and told me I would be arrested when we got to Tel Aviv if I kept bothering them. In the meantime, she went up to the flight deck, and the captain had invited her up to the flight deck. And Burton had just come out of detox. And I sat on the other side of the aisle swigging champagne cocktails. And his tongue was literally hanging out. And I ordered him a drink and said, "Here, have a drink. You look miserable." I said, "We're both Brits. All I want's a few words about how you're getting remarried and what have you." And he started talking, and we were having a good chat. And Liz came back and raised Cain, and I was warned back to my 8 seats. And then we got to Tel Aviv, and of course, all the rest of the press were on the story too, but they were all down in economy. And and when we got to Tel Aviv, she was so angry she canceled her press conference. So I had the story to myself.
I absolutely love that. Buying up all of first class so you would be the only one there with Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, and then pursuing it that way. Absolutely wild. That's just so classic. Really is.
Well, that's the sort of thing we did. Now, I mean, now the Enquirer is run by interns, and they make up everything.
Yeah, I mean, there really is. There's a fiction that is pursued here. That's quite disturbing, isn't it? It's such a pleasure.
By the way, I was going to put in a plug for my book, Honey Trap.
Oh yeah, please.
I have a novel which is on Amazon at the moment, which is all about tabloid journalism, and it's called Honey Trap.
Tony, there it is. Honey Trap. Tony Brenna. Come on. How about it for Tony, everybody? Tony is our engineer and makes all things happen. Producer. And,
that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Maybe we'll have, if we can, Tony, can we rally a link to Tony's book, to Honey Trap, have a link in the description. So we'll have a link to your book.
Oh,
okay.
Great.
So maybe, I mean, what a life in journalism. And there's still so much life left. You're a young man still.
I'm 90 years old now.
90 years old. Come on, everybody. 90 years old and sharp as a tack. Such a pleasure to meet you.
The irony was, of course, that when I first came to the States, I also worked for Editor and Publisher magazine, which was the trade journal of the American press. So I was also writing a lot about publishing and newspaper ethics. So went the full cycle.
Well, you certainly know about it. You've seen it from both sides. Okay. Pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to the next time, too. Tony Brenna, everybody. Thanks, Tony. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.